Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 170. You might hear some background noise in this recording on the podcast. There is a storm blowing in, which is ironic based on what we're going to talk about today. But I apologize if you hear some things kind of banging around. If you hear one of my dogs barking, there's some chaotic energy around us. We are going to create the calm within the chaos, which is today's topic. So it's been almost a month since I've done a full-length show, and I just wanted to say if you are missing that weekly interaction, you can join me in my Spiritual Integration Sanctuary. It's $11 a month. You get access to all the bonus episodes. So there have been 2 bonus episodes in this meantime, one of which came from the beach. We had our first virtual live interactive meeting. We did an activation as part of that last week. So, and the meditations for these full-length episodes are only available in that group. So what we're doing in that group is exploring what it means to be in a 5D community, talking about all things awakening, ascension, talking about non-human quantum origins, so elemental, starseed, and angelic origins. We're having a really good time in there, so we'd love to have you join us. So today we are going to talk about becoming the calm in the chaos. And I'm going to laugh like on and off throughout this episode because of the way this happened. So I had this topic in mind for last week, and I will tell you that this topic came to me weeks ago, and the wording that came in was becoming the eye of the storm. And then we had 2 major hurricanes in the meantime where that wording just felt really not honoring to me. I did not want to continue using that wording. So the wording we're using is becoming calm in the chaos. And this topic, it's been kind of evolving, and then I wasn't going to talk about it at all because so many things had happened between last week and this week. Last night I went to bed and I had like 4 or 5 different topics in mind. And be careful what you wish for. So right before I went to sleep, I said to my guides, I need some guidance about what to talk about tomorrow. I don't know what to talk about. I didn't have like a story that would illustrate what I was talking about on any of these episodes because there's been such chaotic energy around that I just didn't have any one thing. I didn't have any one topic in mind. I didn't have any one story. So right before I went to sleep, I was like, I need some guidance on what to talk about in the morning. And I think in my mind, I was thinking I would wake up with this like clear idea or something. And what happened is that they sent me the most intense dream not that I've ever had, but it was definitely up there, probably in the top like 5. And it perfectly illustrates exactly what I was planning on talking about with this becoming the calm in the chaos, and actually in such a beautiful way because we're going to talk about this as it relates to this 3D to 5D shift. So just a quick kind of recap. You can go listen to the whole episode where I talk about that 3D to 5D timeline shift. But essentially, we're being asked humanity-wide to move out of this 3D. This is just kind of a term we've used, we've like agreed upon in the spiritual community to use. It really just means kind of a denser, more fearful, and kind of constricted way of living into this 5D expansion, which is this more expanded, more unconditionally loving way of being. And there's a lot of things going on with that I've been talking about for like a year now. So you can go back and listen to all of that, but just a little bit of context. So, and I might be stalling a little bit because this dream was really triggering. So the first thing I'm going to say is that sometimes when we have a dream, it's just a dream. It's like our brain doing its thing. Sometimes when we have a dream, it's like an astral travel situation where some aspect of your being is really in the place where this is happening. And this is how this dream felt to me last night. I had all of the physical sensations of being physically in this situation, which was extremely scary and triggering. So I'm just going to tell you the story of this, and then we'll kind of go into how this illustrates this idea of becoming the calm in the chaos and the power of that, and what does this mean in this kind of 3D to 5D transition. So in this dream, I was on a cruise with my husband, which I should have known it was a dream because that's not something I would probably do in real life, just because I I have pretty bad motion sickness, and so the idea of like rocking around on a boat doesn't seem particularly relaxing to me. But again, this felt like an astral experience. Like I was physically present in this space. I was having all of the physical sensations of being in this situation. And I will say, just as a little bit of a warning, because I don't want anyone else to get triggered, this does involve kind of a scary situation. And if you're feeling like in a trauma triggered state, maybe skip past this story the next, 5 or so minutes, and or just skip this episode and come back to the next one, or kind of skip ahead in the episode, because I'm going to tell you pretty much in detail what happened, because it's a really good illustration. And again, this was a dream. This did not happen to me in real life, even though I physically felt like I was present. So keep that in mind as well. So I was on this cruise with my husband in this dream, and we had stepped outside. We were outside on like the outer deck, and out of nowhere, this giant storm came up out of nowhere. Like it was completely calm. And then all of a sudden, like these huge waves were coming in, and like water was blowing around, and it was incredibly scary and incredibly intense. And I wrapped my elbow around like a railing on the side of the ship. And it was so intense. It felt like I could feel all the physical sensations of this. Like I felt like I woke up like, and my arm was sore, and maybe in my dream, in this reality, I was like doing this in my bed or something. But I wrapped my arm around this railing to hold on so that I wouldn't get thrown off the ship. That's how like violent this weather was in this dream. And my husband was behind me, so I kept turning around to like make sure he was still there, because he was also kind of like holding on to this railing, but he was behind me. And so we were getting rocked back and forth, and these huge waves were coming up. And again, I could feel all of this physically in the dream, could feel the water hitting me. I could feel, like the fatigue of my muscles as I was like wrapped around this railing, like holding on for dear life. And it just kept getting like more and more violent. I kept thinking we were going to capsize in this giant boat. And it was really intense and really scary. And I could hear people screaming around me. There were a few other people out on the deck. There were people inside the ship. And I kept having this thought like, well, maybe if I was inside the ship, it would be better. But then I realized like if the ship went down, we were all going down. Like we were literally all in the same boat, no matter where we were on the ship. So I'm holding on to this railing, and we're getting tossed around, and it was just getting more and more intense and more scary. And at one point a tornado came, and we were right in the middle of the tornado, and actually like picked up the front of the ship, like the bow of the ship. And it was like, we were like vertical. And it was kind of at that point that I had this shift. I had this thought like, there's nothing I can do about this. Like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Like, that's, and I kept waiting for, the water was like coming in. I kept waiting to kind of get sucked down underneath. And I do have drowning dreams. I think in a past life I may have drowned. So that's one of my fears that comes up in dreaming. And then in kind of traditional dream symbology, sometimes water represents emotion. So I have a lot of water dreams and kind of ocean dreams. But this was very different and very realistic. Like, again, I could actually feel all of this happening. So the ship actually went almost like vertical, and I was still holding on. And I kept turning around, kind of checking to make sure my husband was there. And then at a certain point, I just completely surrendered. I was like, you know what? I have absolutely no control of this situation. Like, this is what's going to happen is going to happen. I don't actually have a fear of dying, because I've seen what happens after we die, both for myself and for other people. I thought this is a particularly unpleasant way to get there, but I just, all of a sudden, this sense of calm settled over me. And I could hear all the things that were going on around me. I could hear people screaming, could hear my husband kind of making noises. And I stopped looking around for him. I just realized, like, there's nothing I can do. I couldn't, like, save him because I couldn't save myself. It was just a situation where if the ship was going down, the ship was going down, and we were all going down with it. We had no control of what was happening. So this intense calm and peace settled on me. And I was still holding on. I was still, like, trying to keep myself safe on the off chance that we got out of this situation somehow. But I started to just radiate out love. I started thinking of all of my family and my friends and the people that I know and love in my life. And I started like sending them these messages of love because I figured it was my last chance to contact anybody. And I wanted to leave this world in a peaceful state, in a calm state, in an expanded state. And so I just began radiating love out, and I began sending, just like reaching out to each one of the people in my life and saying, I love you so much. I'm so grateful for the time we had together. And I could hear all of the chaos around me. Like we were getting tossed all over the place. The ship was like not in the position a ship should ever be in. But I was in this complete state of calm and this complete state of surrender, but it was almost beyond surrender. It was like an offering. I was just offering love. And I thought, all of these people are so frightened, and well, they should be. It was a completely terrifying situation in this dream. And so I was sending love out to the ship itself, to the people on the ship, to the people in my life. I just became this beacon of love. And I thought, whatever happens to me, I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm going to a place where I'm going to be loved and supported. And I just sent that love out. And it was intense to the point that I was aware of everything that was going around me, but it kind of faded. It was like someone turned down the volume. I had my eyes closed, so I wasn't seeing all the water. And I was kind of waiting for the time when I was going to just like gulp in water and realize it was the end. And I was completely prepared for that. I was just ready for that. I was like, I'm going to radiate love out until I can no longer breathe, until I'm no longer alive. I'm just going to be in this state of complete love. And all of a sudden, like it calmed down. Like we were still rocking back and forth. Like it was still fairly violent, but like this vertical feeling of like maybe the ship was going to completely sink, like that went away. And there was like a lot of waves and wind, and we were still being rocked around. But at a certain point, I opened my eyes because I was like, oh, maybe the storm is passing. And I could actually see buildings in like the not too far away. And I realized we were like heading into a port. And then the dream kind of ended. It went on for a long time. I'm not going to go on to the rest of it because then it just kind of turned into a weird dream. But this astral experience of this dream ended with us coming up to like land, to a port, and people on the land like helping people out of this boat. And it was such an intense experience. Like I woke up like, oh, like be careful what you wish for, because I was like, I asked my guides what I should talk about today, and they gave me like a literal experience of what I had planned to talk about last week, which is this becoming the calm in the chaos. And I think this dream perfectly illustrates every point that I wanted to make. So I'm going to go through this and kind of talk about some different points about this and like why this topic is so important. So in this 3D to 5D transition, one of the things that has been really messing with people, and that one of the questions that comes up the most on TikTok, and one of the things I've been trying to wrap my mind around, because it's really hard to kind of understand this or to like wrap your head around this concept, is this idea that the 3D and the 5D are splitting, but we are sharing the same physical reality. So there's some idea amongst the spiritual community that this is like the people in the 5D are going to somehow like leave the earth or like end up in a different place or something like that. And that's not what resonates for me. That's all of the information I've gotten is that is not the case. So literally we are all in the same boat, just like this dream. We were all in the same boat. It was a giant boat, lots of different sections. So some people, like at the point of the dream when I was thinking about the people inside the boat, I knew there were people inside the boat. I had no interaction with them. I had no direct awareness of them. I just knew they were there. There was a giant boat and there were people on, all levels of the boat. I just happened to be on the outer deck of the boat when this happened. And that came to me as like a really interesting sort of representation or analogy for this 3D to 5D shift. We are all in the same boat, literally. We are all on the earth. We are all in this physical plane, whether we are operating out of a 3D frequency or a 5D frequency. And what's happening with this split is kind of like me being on the deck and other people being inside the ship. So just for representation's sake, we will say the people in the ship were in the 3D, let's say, and the deck was the 5D. I think we were all in the 3D because we were all in a state of fear. So what the 3D is, it is an inner state. It is not something that is external to you. And that is why this topic is extremely important, because the external chaos that is going on right now is not going to let up anytime soon. The extreme weather events, the extreme geopolitical climate, the chaos in our own lives, the chaos that seems to be all around us that has been growing. We had a global incident of chaos with the pandemic in 2020, and that was the beginning of this huge call to wake up. So if you are not being shaken awake, sometimes you will keep sleeping. And this chaos is serving the purpose of trying to wake humanity up so that we can choose to go from this internal state of 3D, of fear vibration, into this internal state of 5D, of love vibration. And because the outside world is a reflection of our inner world, what will happen is if enough of us shift our frequency to where we're operating mostly out of that 5D, we're not always going to be in that state. We'll talk a little bit more about that. If enough of us shift from this internal state of kind of restriction and fear to this internal state of expansion and love, what we will see in the outer world reflected back to us will begin to calm down. The chaos is a reflection of this internal struggle that is going on humanity-wide right now of, do I stay in a more fear-based vibration, otherwise what we're calling the 3D, or do I take this huge leap of faith and do the work, because there is a huge amount of internal work that is required to make this shift. It is not a spontaneous shift. It is not a magical thing that's just like you're going to wake up one day. I was just talking with someone about that this week. We're not just going to wake up one day and like magically be in this state of bliss all the time. That's not how being a human being works. Even when you've made kind of the overall shift and you're mostly operating out of the 5D, there are 3D elements. There is always going to be fear. There is always going to be doubt. There is always going to be trauma that's coming up. No matter how far we get on this journey, we are still excavating little bits of trauma from our own past or past lives, generational trauma, cultural trauma. That's one of the things we're being asked to shift. So that stuff is going to keep coming up. What changes when you make that shift is that more often than not, you are in that state of expansion. You are in that state of love, and you are able to find the calm and become the calm in the midst of the chaos. You're able to become the calm. And I did a show a while ago where I think I talked about like finding calm amidst the chaos or something. I can't remember the exact wording. It was quite a while ago. And the difference here, there's a nuanced difference here that's really important. Because finding calm is really important. It's the first step. Finding the calm within yourself is the first step. Nervous system retraining is usually the first step to that, because we've got to retrain our bodies that they're safe. And it's a little bit of, the word that comes to me is like trippy. It's a little bit of a trippy process, because in a lot of ways the world is not safe. There's all this chaos around us. So we have to convince our bodies that we are safe, because from a spiritual perspective, we are always safe. In that dream, I was confronted with the very real prospect of my own death in a very short period of time. And that's extremely scary. There's an existential fear there about dying. And beyond that too, because I don't have that fear really of dying, it's the fear of suffering. It's the fear of pain. It's everybody else's fear. All of us in that boat were in fear. It's the fear of the unknown. What is going to happen to us? Are we going to make it through this situation? All of that is very real fear. And so what we train ourselves to do with this spiritual work, with meditation, with nervous system retraining, is to find the calm in the midst of the chaos. And that's the first step. But beyond that, we actually become the calm within the chaos. So first, I said in that dream, I had this moment where I sort of surrendered. I realized, like, there's nothing I can do about this situation. It's going to happen regardless of how I feel about it. So I am going to shift my internal landscape to find peace, to find calm, to find love, regardless of what was happening around me, regardless of whether I was actually going to die in this dream. I shifted my perspective. I'm going to look for the calm. I know how to find this. I've been training for this for years. I'm going to find my own calm. That's the first step. And then after I found that calm, I became that calm. And when you become the calm, that is when you begin to radiate that energy out. So when you're in this transition from this fearful or 3D vibration into this loving or 5D vibration, first you've got to find it. You've got to connect with it for yourself. But then what we are here to do to serve humanity, if you're listening to this, you're absolutely in this group of beings, of souls who has come here to serve humanity. We are here to support and serve each other. So when you find the calm, then the next step beyond that is to become the calm. And when you become the calm, when it's completely woven through your entire system, then you have the power to radiate that calm outward. And so that is what I began doing in that dream. I found my own calm, and then I just began radiating that calm, that love outward, that unconditional love, sending the love to the people I loved, to the people on the boat with me, to the people on the on the deck of the ship who were desperately clinging, trying not to get thrown off the ship into this like tumultuous sea. That is a perfect analogy for how this humanity-wide shift happens. So in this example, where I was on, I don't know how many people are on a cruise ship, thousands of people probably. And in my perspective in the dream, around me and from what I could hear, I was the one person kind of in the calm, and who became the calm and who radiated the calm outward. And the dream ended with us getting out of this storm and finding safety, finding a port in the storm. And I think that is an analogy for how we shift humanity. So if one person has the power to shift this situation for thousands of others on this boat, and there could have been many other people doing what I was doing in this situation. I was just aware of myself. Imagine the power that 1,000 people have to shift what is happening in reality for humanity. Before this last hurricane, there was this call for spiritual workers, light workers, energy workers, healers, whatever word you want to use for that. A lot of people came together, and I saw this thing about working on the hurricane, and it was very interesting to me because I had received this phrase, become the eye of the storm, before these hurricanes came through. And I don't want to diminish anyone's experience here, so forgive me if this is triggering. But I saw a bunch of people posting on social media about doing energy work on this hurricane. And the suggestion was to focus on the eye of the storm in order to essentially expand and enlarge the eye of the storm, to draw the energy from the storm into this calm area of the eye in order to lessen the intensity of the storm. And whether that worked, there are anecdotal stories of people feeling like this did in fact impact this storm and perhaps made it less intense than it might have been. It still did a lot of destruction, and I do not want to minimize that in any way. What we're talking about is the idea. This is the first time I've ever seen this idea presented of people coming together to work on something in the external world that seems to be completely out of our control. And by just becoming this calm in the chaos, by becoming this beacon of unconditional love and light, that we can affect what is happening. And of course we can, because again, the external is a reflection of the internal. So the global external environment right now is a reflection, and always is a reflection of collectively our internal landscapes. So again, the more of us that move out of that, another word for fear might be chaos, out of that fearful, chaotic, sort of restricted 3D frequency or vibration, and this is a literal term that I am using. There is an actual frequency to this. You can study the different frequencies of, for instance, the brain. When it is in coherence, when it is in harmony, the brain waves actually line up, as opposed to when we are like in an anxious state, the waves look more chaotic. So there is actual physical manifestation of this. When we shift internally out of that chaos, out of that fear, into the calm, into the expansion, into the love, it has real ramifications, not just for our own system, which is amazing enough, but for the world around us. And I've been saying this throughout the course of this entire show. The reason I focus on internal work, on spiritual work individually, is because the work we do on ourselves radiates out into the world around us. And if enough of us do this work, we have the power to change that collective energy so that what is reflected back to us is no longer this intense chaos and fear vibration, but it becomes a calmer and more expanded and more loving vibration. Is it going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. Is it an easy journey? Absolutely not. I just made a TikTok this morning where I was talking about, I see a lot of content creators and spiritual leaders in the social media world, and they're a little bit smug. Some of them are a little bit smug. Well, I'm in the 5D, and maybe you've made your choice and you've made it here with me, and congratulations. Like, we're in a different state of being. And it feels very false to me because nobody is in that state all of the time. It's not how we are made. We are mammals. We have this biology that goes in and out of a triggered state. It is meant to. So to me, it is not helpful to present this idea of like, once you arrive in this space, you're going to get here. And there's also a little bit of a feeling here of like, sorry, everybody else, like we made it and like you didn't make the right choice. There's judgment in that. I feel judgment in that. And judgment is a 3D manifestation. So if you think you're in a 5D space, but you're judging, you're not really there. And nobody's there indefinitely. This journey does not end. Every time I expand, then afterwards there's a contraction. And then I expand further and there's a contraction. And there's always a point in that process where you get to this place and you're like, I don't know where I could possibly go from here. Like sometimes it's like, I'm so expanded, I can't imagine being more expanded. Sometimes it's like, I have so much like fear and doubt and pain in me right now that I cannot imagine that I will ever be able to be in an expanded state. And a lot of times that intense triggering is what comes up right before the big expansion. But it takes courage, it takes commitment, it takes support. It's one of the reasons I started my online community, because once we make this shift, humanity-wise, once we reach this tipping point where enough of us have shifted for enough of the time that we can start creating this new earth, as Dolores Cannon called it, we're going to need systems. All of our systems at this point are 3D based. They are hierarchical, meaning someone is at the top and someone is at the bottom. Someone is benefiting more than someone else. That is not a 5D structure. 5D structure is more of a circle. So once we can get out of this hierarchical kind of ladder structure and into this circular structure, we are going to need to figure out how to make new systems. How do we make systems that serve everybody? How do we change things like the healthcare system and the education system and the banking system? All of these things that everybody pretty much acknowledges are not working. If they're working for what? The top 1% of people. who are taking advantage of 99% of the rest of us who have been in this state of fear and chaos and 3D and struggle for so long. They are taking advantage of that. They are taking advantage of the fact that most people are just struggling to make ends meet and are struggling in this capitalistic society that is not serving anybody but the people at the top. So part of this 3D to 5D transition is figuring out, what do 5D systems look like? They don't really exist now, maybe in small communities. This is a grassroots shift. My whole body is tingling. This is not where I intended on going, but that is always confirmation from my guides. This is a grassroots shift. This is a shift that happens within small communities. It starts individually. It spreads to small communities. And again, that is the ripple effect. When you drop a pebble in a pond, there's a ripple, there's a ripple, there's a ripple, there's a ripple. So the initial pebble is the first person, the one person who says, I'm going to make this change for myself. And for a lot of us, it starts out of pain. I don't want to be in pain anymore. I need to figure out a way to find more space, to find more expansion so I'm not in pain. And that's the pebble dropping into the pond. And then the ripple of that is like, it ripples out to maybe friends and family, and they see the shift. And sometimes it's triggering, and sometimes those people choose to leave our field. But sometimes it inspires them to start making change. And then there's another ripple. I started my spiritual integration sanctuary community. That's one of those ripples. There's 6 or 7 people in there right now. I don't want to discount anybody. It's a small space. But that is where this starts. And when we can get into small groups like that, and we can start to talk about this, and we can talk about how this is not an easy shift. And anyone who tells you that it's easy, or who tells you that they've made it and there's no pain or suffering in their life anymore, is not being truthful, probably with themselves. They may intentionally be trying to deceive you, but we're really good at self-delusion. We're really good at convincing ourselves that something is true when objectively it's maybe not the case. That's kind of what the whole ego is. It's this sort of protection device that was designed to try to keep us safe, but at a certain point, it's keeping us limited. It's keeping us in this like fearful vibration. So as we do this work for ourselves, we support other people doing this work, we create these small communities. This is how this shift happens. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed. It's really easy to be on the deck of that boat, holding on for dear life in a total state of fear because everything looks like it's hopeless, because the ship has literally gone vertical and you feel like it's starting to sink. But when you turn your attention inward, which is why this meditation show exists, this is why I love meditation, and I still feel that guided meditation is the easiest way to access that for most people, because most of the time our brain is so trained to be really active that giving it something to focus on, like me guiding you through a meditation, allows you to access that meditative state with a little less struggle, with a little more ease. When we get into meditation, when we get into silence, we turn our attention inward. No matter what is happening around us, we can find peace and calm and that unconditional love and expansion. But it's not a short process. It's not an easy process. And though there's kind of a hermit mode in this process, there's a dark night of the soul where a lot of times we're sort of in that hermity mode. It's not a process that can be done in isolation. In order to come out of that vibration, you need other people to model it for you. You need somebody like me who is operating in that space and being honest about what it feels like. I am very honest about how I struggle and how I just had a big trauma release last week that I'm still processing. Like, I do not believe that there is anyone alive on earth right now that is always in the vibration of love and expansion and joy. It is not a natural state, and we are natural beings. As much as we want to embrace our quantum and our spiritual, which is my favorite thing to do, we would not be in this physical reality if we were not meant to be here and making change in the physical. So we have to be embodied. We have to be present in our body. I have a lot of shows on that to help with that. We have to be connected to the earth. We have to work with the earth instead of just ignoring her and pretending that we can just exert our will on her and everything will be fine. That's a perfect sort of description of patriarchy and capitalism. We are moving away from this hierarchy, this like, I am here above you and you are down below me and I will tell you what to do, into this circular way of being, into this like mutual support, mutual aid. And there may be somebody holding the space. Like in my community, I'm the one holding the space. There's a buy-in for that, just to help me, while we're still in capitalism, hold the space and try to do what I'm here to do and be supported in that so I can eat and feed my family and things like that. But we are moving into that space of mutual support and aid. That is what the 5D is, if we can access it. But we need support, we need assistance, we need encouragement, we need to be honest about what this looks like. Because it's not all love and light and joy and bliss all the time. Sometimes it is, and when it is so amazing. But sometimes it is, I am recognizing the fear that I'm still holding, the limiting beliefs that I'm still holding, the issues that are still in my body that reflect that project that 3D vibration of chaos, of fear. And the last thing I'll say before we step into the meditation, if you're in the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary before the podcast episode concludes, is something that I say a lot, and I know I need to hear it as often as I say it or more, so I'm going to say it to you as well. We need to be able to give ourselves and other people grace in this process. No one is perfect. We are not meant to be perfect. So we do struggle. We make mistakes. We have bad days. And that is okay. We get pulled into those 3D situations that we're trying to step out of. And it's all about awareness. Being aware of what's going on is the only way that you can allow for shift to happen. But most of us are so hard on ourselves, and sometimes that projects out into being hard on other people, that we're limiting our own growth through that judgment. I mentioned before that the 5D is a judgment-free zone. And just briefly, that this may become a whole other show. Unconditional love does not mean we allow for everything. It means sometimes setting boundaries. It means sometimes stepping away from situations. It means sometimes making hard decisions. But to the best of our ability, we release the judgment around those things. When we say goodbye to a situation, to the best of our ability, we say goodbye with love. Because we would not have been in that situation if it did not serve us in that particular time. And we allow ourselves to evolve. We allow ourselves to grow. We allow ourselves to change and to shift into new situations and new relationships. And we have grace to the best of our ability for ourselves especially, and for other people, because that is a reflection oftentimes of how we feel about ourselves, how we're treating ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a really important topic that we need to begin discussing openly. We need to begin building community around, and that we need to allow grace as well for ourselves and others, and releasing the judgment as much as possible. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening, and I will see you on the next episode of Wind Down Wednesdays.